Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Samantha Johnson, and I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement at the University of Colorado Boulder's Leeds School of Business. Leeds is a top business school offering undergraduate, MBA, MS, and PhD programs, and has an alumni network of over 41,000 strong living and working around the world. We're excited to have Jake Hurwitz presenting on the 5 steps to building a memorable brand for today's webinar. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, if you have any questions now or during the presentation that you would like to ask Jake, please send those questions through the chat interface. I will monitor those questions as they are submitted, and Jake will answer them throughout his presentation. As a reminder, for optimum audio quality, we do have everyone on mute except for myself and our speaker. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, please notify us through the chat interface and one of our support specialists will touch base. Jake will be asking webinar attendees questions throughout the presentation and will ask that you raise your hand via the hand button that you can find on the left side of your attendee panel, and we'll be calling on volunteers to have discussions. You will be able to use your phone or computer microphone in order to have these discussions. Lastly, a link to access the webinar recording will be sent to all registrants later today along with a survey link. Now, I'd like to introduce today's speaker. As the VP of Branding at BoulderBits, Jake Hurwitz spends his time obsessing over startups, technology, elegant design, and film. Previously, Jake was the original founder and CEO of Eyesight Collective, one of Colorado's top 50 startups to watch in 2017, and was named amongst the top 6 entrepreneurs under 25 in Colorado. When Jake is not behind a computer screen, you would be hard-pressed to find him anywhere other than on his snowboard or mountain bike. Welcome, Jake, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Hey, everybody. I'm Jake. I hope you enjoy hearing my voice and not seeing my face. So anyway, this is awesome. I appreciate you all tuning in. We're going to talk about branding today. So branding is one of those things that most people struggle with. I've gotten hundreds of questions over the years of being a designer and a founder and now a VP on what is a brand and how do I create a personal brand that people like and how do I not be a poser inauthentic. So it's really important to understand before we get started that branding is pretty much the same for an organization, whether it's your company or for an individual. At the end of the day, people remember people and they remember stories and they remember things that they trust. So I have 5 pieces that I like to incorporate into every brand that I start. Currently, my role as VP of Branding at BoulderBits is to build brands. We're a startup studio located here in Boulder, Colorado, which means we're basically a team of entrepreneurs who come up with ideas for startups, and the ones that show promise, we then build into companies. The goal is to launch 3 companies a year. And so as VP of Branding, I'm in charge of everything from designing our early stage websites, coming up with social media content, figuring out what's the story behind this company, how are we going to tell it, who are we telling it to, and then actually executing until those companies are ready to move off on their own. So there are 5 pieces that go into this that in order for your brand to be memorable, whether it's for yourself or for your organization, they all have to work together. And it's really this formulaic approach to figuring out how the rest of the world understands and interprets who you are or who your company is and what you do, and then gaining an understanding of what's in their head and then giving it right back to them. So we're going to go through those 5 steps. First off, I'll say that I've never given this presentation over a webinar before. I've only done it in person, and I like for it to be super interactive. I love to call on people. I love to have people share a little bit about their story. For each of the 5 pieces, I'd love at least 1 volunteer. So if you're somebody who's comfortable sharing what it is that you do with your business or with yourself, I would love to have sort of a back and forth dialogue, and Samantha will help moderate and coordinate who's going to chime in. So a little bit more about me. Let me go to my screen. So I have a creative background. I was born and raised in New York, just north of New York City. I lived there for 18 years and then moved out to Colorado to be closer to the mountains and to go to Leeds School of Business. Growing up, I spent tons and tons of time just drawing and designing and taking pictures and making videos and exploring the lack of forestry that is in New York, but trying to make the best of the outdoors pretty much everywhere. And when I came to college, I started as a freelance designer, building really mediocre websites for companies, local startups, my parents' friends, stuff like that. And as I got older, my work started to get better, and I learned a lot about how to talk to adults and how to talk to clients and how to get clients. And through that pursuit, I ended up starting a creative agency during my sophomore year of college. That agency grew really quickly. We ended up working with about 75 clients in the first year, of all shapes and sizes. So these were mostly tech startups here in Boulder and Denver, a lot of university programs at CU, and the team grew really quickly. So within the first year, we ended up bringing on about 16 other students to help us create these websites, create these videos, take these photos, make these logos, all that stuff. So with that, it then led me into my current role as VP of Branding at Boulder Bits. So just to circle back again a little bit, a lot of people have asked me over the years, like, hey, can I have some help on my resume or with this logo or my personal portfolio? But the truth is, I can't teach them how to be a good designer, and that's this slide. But we'll backtrack a little bit. A lot of common pain points that people suffer from, and if you resonate with this, feel free to think about it in your head for a few minutes, and we'll circle back again. People have a hard time creating unique and beautiful websites. I know I certainly did. Creating good resumes, portfolios, stuff that stands out. I mean, we've all been there where we send our resume into a job that we really, really want, and then there's crickets. And then we try again, and there's crickets. And we don't know why, but turns out that hundreds of other people are also sending in their resumes, and ours just doesn't stand out. So we're gonna talk about how to make that happen. And leaving a lasting impact. Essentially, we want to build a brand for ourselves or for our organizations that people talk about around the campfire. If you're on the East Coast, I'm sure you probably don't hang out around a campfire too often, but in Colorado you might. But these are brands or people that leave an impact that people are willing to speak about and share with their friends, and it comes up in conversation in the elevator or at the water fountain. So like I said, I can't teach really anybody how to be a good designer right now, but I can teach you 5 solutions on how to help yourself. So think of this as more of a vitamin than a medicine that you can take with you for the rest of your life moving forward. So let's dive into our 5 solutions. Number 1, the most important of all 5, and that's why it's number 1, is what is your why? I'm sure many of you have heard this a lot lately. Simon Sinek is a very famous entrepreneur and author who speaks about your why a lot. But this is really important for pretty much everything that you do, everything that you put out into the world. So I want to start by bringing somebody in to share a little bit about what it is that they do. So Samantha, would you help me find somebody that is willing to share a story of what it is that they do day to day, whether it's in their company or for themselves?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So if individuals who would be interested in sharing could raise their hand via that hand icon on the left side of your attendee panel.
All right, cool. Looks like we have 1.
Great. All right, let me get to this, folks. Thank you, Sam. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you here. All right, Sam, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I'm actually in a public office. Is there any way I can type my response?
We might be able to do that. Let's see what we can do.
Yep, so Sam, if you go ahead and type your response through the question area on your attendee panel, then I can go ahead and share that with everybody.
All right, this is cool. We're going to work with technology here and figure this one out. All right, so Sam, can you just type in the number 1 if you can hear me okay and we've got a good dialogue here? All right, I'm not seeing anything.
All right. So Sam has said that he assists CEOs by helping them with their company scale up needs.
Got it. Awesome. So that's your what, and that's good. So that's what you do day to day. So Sam, I'm curious, why do you do that? I wish we could play like the Jeopardy theme song as people are typing.
We do this to create an entrepreneurial community of growth in Colorado.
Cool. That's awesome. Why?
This is to grow Colorado scale-ups to become the next Fortune 500 companies.
Cool. All right. Now this is where things are going to start to get a little bit difficult. I'm going to ask you again, Sam, why? Why do you want to grow Colorado startups to become the next Fortune 500 companies?
To make Colorado the friendlier version of Silicon Valley.
All right. So for the sake of time, I'm going to just kind of wrap things up with this one real quick. But the idea here is we ask why 10 times. We ask why 15 times. We ask ourselves why. We ask each other why. We ask our companies why. The deeper you're able to get, the more you're able to get closer to your heart and your soul and the real reason behind pretty much everything that you do. When you get to that level, you're able to actually communicate from inside at a level that people are truly able to resonate with. And without that, there's not much to latch onto. So I've been in situations where I ask people, what do you do? And they'll say, I walk dogs. I say, well, why do you walk dogs? Because it's really fun. Oh, okay, why is it fun? I'm not really sure, because I like to go outside and hang out with dogs. Oh, okay, well, why do you like to hang out with dogs outside? Oh, and then this is where people start to have a blank look on their face and they start to think about their childhood. They start to think about their parents and their family and their friends. And that's when we're starting to be onto something. That's when it becomes important. So, okay, let's kind of dig it out of them. So maybe this is somebody who didn't spend a lot of time outdoors when they were growing up, and maybe they had a sick relative and they got a dog, and that dog truly saved his or her life. Now we're onto something. Now we can start to understand the purpose behind everything that we put out into the world. And this is all in really the reason is to help us figure out what our core mission is. Everything that we do in life, everything that your organization does in life has to be tied to a deeper mission. Otherwise, what are you working towards? What's your North Star? So if you have this mission statement, which is a pretty common thing for yourself, I personally am on a mission to create a world where humans are able to interact with dogs in the outdoors because it allows them to be happier. I am on a mission to create a world where bullying does not exist for children in schools. Whatever it is for you, understanding that is crucial. And that's really the fulcrum, the pinnacle of everything else that we're going to talk about today and what you put out into the world. So I'll pause there before we move on the topic of your why. Does anybody have any questions on that?
And as a reminder, you can submit those questions through your attendee panel. All right, Jake, so we did have a question come in. How do you know when you've asked your why enough? So for example, you asked why multiple times.
Yeah, I think it's when you seriously can't go any further. I've been in conversations with people where we'll ask why 13 times, 14 times. And it's really to the point where we're talking back to their birth, back to their childhood. We've gotten to the point where people are tearing up, where people are crying and truly feeling like they just unlocked something in their world. Until then, keep going. And the great thing is that you're really never there. When you're driving to work or on a hike or hanging out with your kids, or really anytime you're able to just get in your own head, ask yourself, why am I doing this? And just keep asking yourself why. And as you get older and as you get more experience, there's a good chance you're going to start to unlock more understanding. And that's really special and that's really powerful. Thank you for asking. That's a great question.
All right, and it looks like we don't have any other questions at this time.
Cool. All right, let's move forward.
Oh, Jake, actually, let me stop you. We had one more come in.
All right.
What if you aren't in charge of the why for your brand?
Excuse me. That's a really good question. That's very common as well. So first of all, I would recommend figuring out a way to communicate with the person who is in charge of the brand. If you work for Deloitte or Ernst & Young or a really big company, it's probably going to be pretty hard to get in touch with that person and be able to sit down with them. But you do have that opportunity to do it for yourself. You are in charge of the why for yourself as to why you wake up and get out of bed every morning and get in your car and drive to that office or drive to that school or drive to that blank. You certainly have the power to understand what it is that you are doing. And you also have the power to create your own personal brand within your company. We all probably have a LinkedIn page. We all have the ability to put stuff out on Facebook and LinkedIn and write emails and have our own little branded world around us. Something I would also urge you, and I'll try to be as kind to this as possible, something I would urge you to think about is if your own personal why does not align with your organization's why, there has to be a change. Either, number one, you leave the organization or go somewhere else. And I know that's a hard thing to think about at times, but I'm happy to chat more about it privately if you'd like. Or you need to get in alignment. And there are definitely ways to do that, which we could certainly chat about later on. Thank you for asking. I appreciate that question.
Great. Thanks, Jake. We are good with questions at this time.
All right. So number 2, playground. This is a very bizarre one, and it's my favorite because it's really fun. So this is a very weird question that you could ask yourself and that you should be asking other people. How would you describe my brand if it were a child on the playground? And the reason we do this is because it allows you to get down to the core of how other people understand and identify your brand. So one of the hardest things any individual can do is ask other people, what do you think about me? Tell me about all the things that I'm good at and that I'm terrible at, more so the things that I'm terrible at. How do you interpret me? And hearing those things sometimes is really hard, but it's actually really, really powerful and really important because at the end of the day, you cannot tell the world what your brand is. The world tells you what your brand is. And those with really strong brands, those with memorable brands that make an impact are the ones that understand exactly how the world interprets them, and then they give it right back to them. And it makes sense. It clicks for people in their mind. So I would love to dive into this question with somebody here. Is there anyone here that would be willing to share a little bit about what they do at an organization rather than themselves? Feel free to raise your hand and we can have a quick dialogue back and forth as well.
All right, Jake, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Kate Isaacson.
Hi there.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about what you do.
So I actually just got a new position. I'm on like week 3, but thank you. I work for a media company. It's a newspaper company, and we actually have newspapers all over the place. So it's not just Colorado centric. It's kind of all over the West. So it's kind of a challenging situation because we have very different markets, very different brands. And my role within this is a marketing coordinator. So I'm working on a lot of newsletter campaigns, driving audience and branding through our digital sites, and engagement processes and stuff like that.
Very cool. What's it called?
Swift Communications. It's some of the mountain newspapers, so Vail Daily, Summit Daily, all those.
Cool. We have 42 people that just learned about your brand, so that's awesome.
Awesome. Hello, everyone.
So for Swift Communications, can you tell me how you would describe your brand if it were a child on the playground? I want to know how old this child is, what their name is, where they're playing on the playground, what they're doing, what they're wearing, what kind of shoes they have on, are they dirty, are they clean? Go into as much detail and try to paint this picture for me as much as you possibly can, and I'm here to help you along the way if you need it.
That's like a really hard question because again, we're kind of all over the place. I feel like it's almost like 5 different children running around. We have, we probably have a well, hopefully this isn't too un-PC, but we probably have like a nerdy kid that's kind of more focused on some of the analytics and the background stuff, and then we have the social kids that are running around selling and interacting a little bit more. I would say in general, as an organization, it's usually pretty clean, but there's a lot of new processes, a lot of times where things get a little bit messy. So that's kind of really hard.
One of these sort of brands and verticals. Which is your favorite? The one that you like the most?
Like which position within the company? I'm sorry. What?
You said you have multiple sort of streams, multiple brands. I imagine that's geographically based. Is that correct?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So let's pick one that wherever that you live. Is that a good one to go?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. So the Vail Daily is one of our biggest newspapers. We
Cool.
Have a very big local presence, but we also cater to second homeowners and visitors, and so it's kind of a very ever-changing market. I would say that kid is probably dressed in like active gear, snowboarding gear.
Cool.
He's very active, running around, trying probably doing flips off the gymnasium, gymnastics equipment. Probably very social. Yeah, this is hard.
So what kind of shoes is this kid wearing?
Probably snowboard boots.
Got it. How old is he?
Teenager.
Teenager. Is he hanging out by himself? Is he on the jungle gym with other people? Is he leading other people? What do you think?
Probably leading other people in maybe some unsafe decisions.
Yeah. How do the teachers feel about him?
The teachers? I'd say they probably think he's a smart kid, he's an active kid, but maybe a little bit distracted.
Interesting. Cool. Anything else we can say to describe him? What's his name?
Let's do Zach.
Zach. It's a good name. A lot of times I'll introduce myself as Jake and people are like, Zach? I'm like, Jake?
Yeah, cool. 4-letter guy's name, sure.
Absolutely. Awesome. So, all right, so what we've got here is a rambunctious, adventurous kid. He wears snowboard boots. Not sure why he's wearing them in the playground. Maybe he's snowboarding on the slides, but that works because it's Vail. The teachers kind of see him as, potentially the troublemaker, but they like him because he's good spirit in his heart. So it's really important for us to understand how people understand and see the Vail Daily paper, right? We can basically ask them, so let's say you wanted to sit down with 10 people who read your paper. You would ask them this exact question. How would you describe the brand of the Vail Daily paper if it were a child on the playground? And what's going to be interesting is you're probably not going to get too many similar answers, but you might get a few patterns. And then I would start exploring those patterns. And it'd be cool if, let's say, of those 20 people, 7 of them described Zach. Now you're onto something. Now there's some patterns that you could really start to dig into. And when you go out and make a post on social media about the Vail Daily, or you hire somebody to work for the Vail Daily, or you redesign the Vail Daily website, or you have something in the press about the Vail Daily, it all needs to kind of portray this feeling that Zach would give off, because that's how people are understanding you. And there's this disconnect where you're giving off this feeling of somebody other than Zach, and your audience is looking for Zach. People don't click and they move on. They think about something else. They go read a different paper. They read Summit County Weekly. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So looking for those patterns and kind of seeing what kind of overlying things people tend to recognize.
Absolutely. And there's a feeling behind it. When you're talking to Zach versus one of Zach's peers, let's call her Stephanie. When you're talking to Zach versus Stephanie at a dinner party where their parents brought them along, you get a different feeling. There's a different vibe that comes from that person. They're different brands in themselves. And so it is crucial to really understand that there has to be a connection between the person that is on one end of the brand and the person on the other end. And so we can tie this back to ourselves if you're creating a personal brand versus for an organization. Who am I if I was a child on the playground? This is a fun one. You could ask people, how would you describe me if I was a child on the playground? You might get some pretty interesting answers. And it's up to you to really understand, okay, hey, I'm myself, I'm doing my thing, I'm just being me. This is how the world is interpreting me. So If there's a connection there, then you're onto something. And if there's a disconnect, then something needs to change. We can dive into that as well and how to actually make that change. Thanks, Kate. I really appreciate the question and for you stepping up and sharing with us. Do we have any other questions from anybody else before we move on to number 3?
So Jake, we do have a question before we move on to number 3. So how does the playground question work if you are in the process of developing a business? How would you make it more based on how you'd like for it to be seen once it's launched?
Totally. And that's a great question because I have a lot to say about that because that's how my job operates every day, where we're creating brands from scratch before anyone sees it. So essentially, you got to start somewhere. And a lot of this is going to tie into numbers 3, 4, and 5 that we're going to go through today. But really start with yourself as the founders, as the founding team, the people involved. You know, who are you? And just pick something. It really doesn't matter too much where you go, as long as it's somewhat in the right ballpark. And then once you have an audience, it's time to validate. Once you've got, 10, 15 people that understand you and your brand and what it is that you're trying to do, sit down with them. Say, okay, what colors come to mind when you think about our brand? What images come to mind when you think about our brand? How would you describe our brand if it was a child on the playground? How would you describe our brand if it was a sandwich? If our brand was an article of clothing, what brand of clothing would it be? You have to really start with something, though, to put it in front of people and then critique it from there. And it's really just this constant iterative process. I mean, this is why companies rebrand time and time again as they move forward. And frankly, many, many companies fail because they just pick a brand that they think is cool. They make a logo and they pick some colors and they design a website that they think looks sweet, but their audience doesn't care about it. And it doesn't resonate with them and it doesn't click. That's a really good question. I appreciate you asking. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jake. And we don't have any other questions at this time.
All righty, moving forward. So this is a pretty common one, avatars. For anybody in marketing, I'm sure you've talked about customer personas, avatars. There's some other terms for it that I actually find are pretty geographic. But anyway, this is basically the idea of understanding your customer or your audience or your user better than they understand themselves. So you can paint a picture of your ideal customer, of who they are, what they look like, what they eat, how many hours a night they sleep, what color hair they have, where they live, what they do on Saturday at 2 p.m., what they're doing on Wednesday at 4 p.m., what kind of car they drive, their income, all those things. And when you understand people and your audience to that level, it's very, very simple and easy to segment and attract them and give them exactly what they want to hear in order for them to latch onto you and to buy your product and to hire you, whatever it is. So I'd love to bring in another volunteer to share with me a little bit about their audience, whether it's a customer of yours or somebody who reads your content. Maybe you host a blog or something like that. Samantha, would you help me find somebody that would be willing to share a little bit about their audience?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So if someone who's willing to volunteer would go ahead and raise their hand.
Looks like we've got some shy people here. I'd be happy to run through an example in my own head if that's the case. Just let me know in a second.
We have someone who's raised their hand, so I will go ahead and unmute them.
Awesome. Thank you for doing so.
And can you share your name with us, please? I believe it's Nolana McChristian. Can you hear us okay? So it looks like, however, the computer audio is set up, that we may not be able to do the conversation back and forth. But Nolana, if you want to go ahead and type through the questions on your chat interface on your attendee panel there, I'll facilitate those back with Jake.
Cool, that should work. So the question I'm going to ask you is, let's see. Tell me about the person that is your customer or your ideal user. So a few examples might be, our ideal user is Lisa. She's 41 years old. She has 2 kids. She drives a Honda Pilot because she cares mostly about safety and fuel efficiency. She lives in Austin, Texas, and she is a marketing manager at a local beauty salon. On the weekends, she brings her kids to soccer practice. On the weekdays, she works till about 5 p.m. and then goes to the grocery store right after work most days, or to meet some friends for coffee. Her kids are 7 and 13. You get where I'm going with this. She makes $72,000 a year before taxes. We need to understand that level. So if somebody would be willing to, so Luana, if you'd be willing to share with me sort of the story of your ideal user, we can dive into that a little bit. We can unpack that person.
All right, Jake. So their customer is a wife and husband who just moved into a new home. They would like to start entertaining more and want to impress their new neighbors.
Cool. All right. So if you're willing to share, it's even an opportunity for you to just think about this for yourself. What you need to know and what I want to know is for this wife and husband, obviously we need to know the neighborhood in which they're moving into, the type of home, the year it was built, how much it cost, how much money they're making, what they do on the weekends, what kind of clothing they wear, the types of children they would be on the playground, what type of food they eat for dinner, what kind of music they listen to, what their favorite movies are, what their parents do, what their children do. If you can dive into that level, then we can start to really come up with some interesting stuff. All right.
So Jake, they have dogs and they don't have time to take care of their place. They like sports but don't play themselves.
Got it. Cool. So now we're getting pretty interesting. We need to understand what kind of dogs they have, how long they've had these dogs. If they don't have time to take care of their place, what are they doing with their time? What kind of sports do they like? How come they don't play themselves? Are they past the age where it's easy to play? Do they not have enough time? Do they watch sports on TV? What kind of TV do they have? What time of day are they watching sports on TV, if so? Do they play sports with their dogs? If they do that, where do they play sports with their dogs? So these are all questions that, for the most part, you're really only going to get to know the answers by sitting down with these people and running focus groups and having surveys. But as a marketing person, that is step one. That is a great place to start. And once you understand these things, it's pretty damn easy to send them ads and to send them content and send them emails that just speaks their language. Understanding these people better than they understand themselves is crucial. Is there anything else anybody would like to chime in with on that topic?
So Jake, there's a question for you. What if you narrow down these people so far that you miss out on an entire segment of individuals who might be interested in you?
That's a really good question. So sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. If you narrow it down so far that you sort of ignore other potential people, there's a reason for that they kind of naturally were ignored. I think it's really important when you're getting started to start small. Pick one person, one very specific person, as specific as you possibly can be. And if there's a market of these people where there's enough of them, depending on your business, maybe that's 100 people. If you're trying to build a bigger company, maybe it's 1,000 or 10,000 or 1 million people. If you're trying to build a unicorn type company, $1 billion+, then maybe we're going to want a market of 100 million people or 1 billion people. But you have to start small. And if you start too big and try to cater to multiple types of people, then you're speaking different languages. And person A is going to think, well, why are you talking to person B when you should be talking to me? So it's important to start with one person. If that doesn't work out, all right, we'll try another. And if that one doesn't work out, let's try another. It's a great question. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well? I guess you just have to type yes.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Jake. And it looks like we don't have any other questions at this time.
Cool. All right, moving forward again to number 4, value. So this one's interesting. This one gets overlooked a lot, and it's really hard to dig into yourself and kind of soul search, quote unquote, when you're building a personal brand around this metric. When it's a company brand, it's a little bit easier for an organization. So value is, what are you actually bringing to the table? what do you actually do for the world around you and for your audience? There is a hole in every human's heart from something in their life, and it's your job to fill that hole. And if you're able to align that hole with your product and your story and your why, then you're onto something. It's really easy to think, oh, I'm just really good at designing logos. I used to think I was the best logo designer ever when I was 19 years old, and I was able to create logos for companies that had really poor imagery, and that was the value I was bringing to them. It turns out, as I got older and earned more experience in this field, I was learning a lot more about the value I was actually bringing to people. It was so much more than just a logo. The value I was potentially supposed to bring to people was a lifestyle for them, a business that they were proud of, that they could go home every day and sit down with their spouse and talk about how good they feel about their life. It's a logo that their audience resonates with, so that when they're around the campfire, they talk about it. It's an experience of working with me on creating that logo from end to end, from the second we meet at an event till the moment I deliver that logo and they pay me the final bill. So there's a level of value that you're able to bring to the world that needs to be identified, that you truly fill a hole or a gap in somebody's life. And until then, you're not really solving a lot of problems for them. There are a lot of companies out there, far too many tech companies, especially in Boulder, in my opinion, that don't really solve that big of a problem. They're kind of just solving these little things that help somebody, which is great, and there's a market for it. But if you want to be an impactful brand that people truly resonate with, you're solving problems for them. You're creating solutions that actually move their life forward, that they go home thinking about that experience from end to end. And it's powerful. Does anybody have any questions on value? This is a tough one, and I'd love to answer some questions if anyone's feeling a little bit shady on it.
All right, so we did have a question come in, Jake. So beyond customers, who else can we consider providing value for?
That's a good question. I think it certainly depends on your business itself. And let's say it's a personal brand. So this is a good tree to climb up. If you are creating a personal brand for yourself, let's think, what are you good at? What do people come to you for advice on? Are you the guy or gal who people always ask, hey, can I have some help on my resume? Are you the person that people always come to for movie recommendations? Or, hey, what are you doing tonight? I really need to have a good time. Start to identify, like, what do people see in you as being valuable to them? Are you the person that just knows tons of great music or watches lots of really good movies? Are you the person that is always able to provide a fun night at the bars? Understanding how people understand you, the value that you bring to them, goes across all levels, whether it's customers or not. So then you can pick sort of a stream or a niche around that. So let's pick the one example of you're the person that people always ask for movie recommendations. Great. So now we can create a LinkedIn page and a Facebook page and an Instagram page and a Twitter page and whatever other page you want to, if social media is your thing. And now every week you can come out with your top 5 movies of the week. You can create an email list. You can send it to your friends, your family. You can create a website where people can sign up for it. Now it's just a hobby. And now you're creating value for people in their downtime when they want to watch movies. So the next time someone comes up with a movie idea, think of you. Now you're important. And the opportunities for creating a whole movie recommendation brand from there are endless. You can create, weekly videos on movie reviews, and you can sell products and make shirts and do whatever if you're willing to put in the work, and that's sort of something that you're interested in. But beyond customers, it's just a matter of what do people look to you for? I hope that answers your question. I appreciate you asking, Sam. Looks like we have one more question. All right, let's see. So Tiffany, what if your value is the knowledge you provide? I'm speaking as someone who is a dietitian thinking of going into private practice to work with clients one-on-one. Or is my value what makes me different from other dietitians who have their own private practices? Awesome question. The knowledge you provide is absolutely your value. So if you're a dietitian and you're looking for clients one-to-one and there is competition of other dietitians out there, I think what makes you different is your experience from end to end. So I'll give you a little bit of an example here, tell a bit of a story. So Airbnb, I'm sure we're all familiar with Airbnb. What they did was they hired a writer from Pixar, someone who writes movies, to unpack the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is sort of the typical story of somebody who has a problem and they undergo some sort of quest or journey and they learn a ton of stuff along the way, and they come back to their old life. Their old self is dead while their new self reigns and takes over, and they're able to live a different life from there. So what they did was they hired a writer who understands the hero's journey to unpack what is the experience of an Airbnb user from end to end, from the second they first log on to Airbnb.com, all the way through their browsing, to their booking, to going to the home, to staying at the home, to going home from their vacation, to logging back on Airbnb.com 2 days later on their couch to write a review. Every single touch point is Airbnb's brand. It's their value. So to tie this into your own life, how do you provide somebody not even a 10-star experience, not even an 11-star experience, a 12-star experience from end to end as a dietitian? From the second that you meet them or they go to your website to the last moment you ever talk to them again, hopefully never, every single touch point you have with them in between, how is that a 12-star experience? And I recommend you take the time to draw that out and design it. So, okay, if somebody comes to our website, what does our website have to look like and have to say for them to get the golden treatment? You know, if the Beatles just flew in to America from the UK, there were people there throwing flowers at them after they got off the plane and carrying them on their backs to the show. You know, how do you treat your customers like that? Because I can guarantee you the dietitian next door is not doing that. Treat your customers and your audience in that way. Everything from when they first come to your website, to when they sit down in your chair, to when you send them the follow-up email, to the holiday card that you send them or the custom mug that you send them on Christmas. Everything that can make your experience a 12-star experience will set you ahead. That will beat the competition. And then, let's say one of your customers' name is Diane. Diane's friend says to her, "Oh my God, Diane, you look so fit. How did you do that?" She says, "Oh my God, I have this amazing dietitian, Tiffany. She knows me. She treats me like $1 million. I can't wait to see her next week." Now you've got a viral type of business, word of mouth. I hope that was helpful. That's a really good question. Do we have any other questions on value before we move on to the last piece?
So Jake, it looks like we don't have any other questions at this time.
Cool. All right. Thank you all. Number 5, your style. This one's fun. So this is a little bit of a soul searching question as well. The idea here is you can't fake it. Personally, I'm not going to be very good at running a brand that's got a lot of colors and cartoons and pop art because it's just not my style. I just don't really resonate with it if I'm the founder. My personal brand, if we find out that everyone interprets me as one thing by asking them all these exploratory questions that we went through, but I feel like I'm something else, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. We have to get aligned with that, whether it's in how we understand ourselves or how we treat other people or the things that we post online. There has to be a connection between your own style and how other people interpret you. If you're one for beauty and clean lines and lots of aesthetic, and you're working for a company and posed with and tasked with, you know, creating colorful cartoons, there's a disconnect there. It's just not really going to work so well. So how do you actually get those things aligned? The answer really is to understand your own style. What makes you excited? What makes you tick? If you were to go on to Google and type in, you know, website inspiration design, which sites are you really drawn to? Are they very colorful? Are they white and simple? Are they 3-dimensional? Are they dark and ominous? And there's really nothing wrong with it at all, whichever your style is, but it just has to match with what it is that you're putting out into the world. Does anybody have any questions on how to identify their own style, what this means? Anything I can clarify for them there? Makes sense. Thanks, Rebecca. All right, cool. Well, it looks like we could probably move forward then as a quick wrap up for everything. So when all of these 5 pieces are aligned, you've got a strong brand, or at least you're onto something. whether it's for yourself, personal brand, or whether it's for an organization that you're starting or for a bigger organization that you work for. Make sure that everything is aligned. The reason why you do things, your why, your playground, your child, the way that people actually interpret you, your customers, your avatars, your users. Who are they? What are they doing? Your value. How are you filling gaps in their own heart? And then your style. When your why matches the style in which you put out into the world, when your value actually fills a hole in your avatars, and when your avatars are the same child that's playing on the playground, everything's working, or at least everything's going to work. And if you're in a place where you're not really sure why it's not working, I would recommend going through each of these items one by one and really digging in with your team, with yourself, with your friends, with your spouse, whomever. It's a great opportunity to really get into alignment, look at everything from a big picture, three-dimensional view, and get an understanding of where things can be strengthened, where things can be abandoned. Does anyone have any bigger questions on really anything we covered? I think it's time to open up for Q&A and start to get some answers in there.
Great, thanks, Jake. And as a reminder to everyone, you can go ahead and submit those questions that you have through your attendee panel. All right, Jake, so a question for you. Do you suggest going in order of 1 through 5 in this brand process, or do you feel that it's not necessary to go through it one after the other?
It's not necessary. This is a circular approach. I've actually dabbled in creating worksheets on how do we actually write these out on a piece of paper so that everything works. I would actually recommend, first of all, I can send you all the worksheets so I can attach that later on. The recommendation I would say is take either a big piece of paper or a whiteboard, draw a circle with 5 points around it, or what's the shape with 5 points? Pentagon? Draw a pentagon, and each side would be one of these 5 items. And then you go through and you can actually connect things, draw arrows, draw lines to connect to each other, and you will see where the gaps are.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. And another question for you. Can you expand a little bit more on number 5, your style? For example, if you're looking to build a personal brand?
Yeah, this one's pretty simple. It's really just, what do you like? What excites you? Do you spend all your time on comedy blogs? Do you spend all your time watching The Office? Do you really like Stranger Things? Understanding what shows you're into, what colors you like, what types of clothing you wear. And there's really no one that can tell you if it's right or wrong except for yourself, if it's something that makes you happy. For me, I really like flannel shirts. I really like black leather shoes. So I think, all right, well, what kind of images go along with flannel shirts and black leather shoes? I can go on different websites like Dribbble, Dribble. There's 3 B's, like when you dribble a basketball. That's a great site for understanding what you really resonate with. It's really just show and tell for designers. So I would recommend that as a resource. It's a great website to just search, landing page or baseball or TV in the search box. You'll get tons of results, and create a folder of all the things that excite you, all the pieces of design, all the videos, all the logos, all the images that really light you up. You could even ask some other people, like, hey, what do you think my style is? I don't really know if I have a style. People that you trust, that are close to your world. The bottom line with really any of these things is you have to approach these from the perspective of your audience, the world around you, understanding how other people see your style. But when it comes to yourself, knowing your own style is crucial because it has to come from you. If you're faking it, if you're not somebody who resonates with flannel shirts and black leather shoes, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to speak that language. Thanks for asking, Brett. So if we have any other questions, feel free to type those in below, and I'd be happy to dive in. We've got another 10 minutes or so.
All right, Jake. So it looks like we don't have any other questions at this time. So I'll go ahead and take this opportunity to say thank you so much to everyone for your participation and your incredible questions and for joining us today for the presentation. And Jake, thank you again so much for this great information. As a note, to view upcoming webinars and request previous recordings, please do visit our website at www.colorado.edu/alumni/webinars. And have a great rest of your day and go Buffs.
Thank you all. I invite you all to send me an email if you have any other questions. Happy to chat further. It's jake@boulderbits.com.